Hello, and welcome to Wesley United Methodist Church of Trenton, Missouri. Our church is located at 113 East 9th Street, which is on the corner of 9th and Washington in Trenton, Missouri. You can call our office between the hours of 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday at 660-359-6762, or visit our website at wesleyunitedmethodist.us. Now we invite you to open your heart, mind, and body to the Word of God with Reverend Barry Boulware.
Thank you for your faithful stewardship. We read now from the book of Ecclesiastes. We're in this book throughout the entire sermon theme, A Life Well Lived. I'm going to read for you now a text that you are familiar with. This might be the only text that you are that familiar with in the entire 12-chapter book of Ecclesiastes. We begin with the 3rd chapter. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. May God truly bless this reading of His holy written word. Irwin Shaw has written a short story called The 80-Yard Run. It's a story about a high school freshman who was at his first football practice. He breaks loose from scrimmage for an 80-yard touchdown run. His teammates look at him with awe. His coach says, "You're going to have quite a future around here, my son." His girlfriend hears about it, picks him up after practice and kisses him warmly. He has the feeling that life is completely satisfying. But then, nothing in the rest of his life ever lives up to that day. The rest of his football years never rise above the level of mediocrity. His business career is equally disappointing. His marriage sours, and the pain of failure only increases with each passing year. He knew the joy of that one moment, followed by a lifetime of disappointments. How sad that would be to have your freshman high school year be the high point of your life and have everything run downhill from there. But that young man's story is not as isolated as you might think. There are many people who end up with a low esteem. Life for them is painful, but at the same time, they seem resigned to their pain and reluctant to do anything to change it. They seem to believe that perhaps they deserve to suffer. There are others who choose to play the role of a martyr or arrange to have that role assigned to them in a family or work setting, taking all the pain and blame upon themselves. Too often, the voice of religion has been heard to justify suffering, to tell the people that it is their cross to bear, the fate that God had wished for them, or the fate that they brought down upon themselves by their sinful thoughts and deeds. These are not rare and even extreme cases. On the contrary, these examples are usually grounded in a much more common phenomenon, the attitude of the person who says to himself, "It is not right for me to be this comfortable or this happy. Too many people on all sides of me are less fortunate. I must do something to balance off my life." What we're dealing with here is one of the fundamental conflicts in our American character. On the one hand, we are terribly self-indulgent people. We use far more resources to bring us pleasure and comfort than any other nation. We equip our cars more lavishly than people in other countries are even able to equip their homes. We like to eat well, party well, and live well. But at the same time, we are the spiritual children of the Puritans. We must not deny that or fail to acknowledge it, who settled these shores. And that heritage can at times make us feel guilty when we have indulged in comforts and pleasures. People were not meant to live so well, a voice whispers inside of us sometimes, and we'd better atone for that, we think to oneself. To the Puritans, life was grim, serious business, and sin was always there lurking to tempt us from the proper path. They actually passed laws. Did you know this? They actually passed laws against laughing on Sunday, the Lord's Day. Can you imagine that? Their idea of entertainment was sitting on a hard wooden bench in church listening to a 3-hour sermon on the torments of hell. Someone once defined a Puritan as a person who would abolish bullfighting, not because it caused the bull pain, but because it gave the spectators pleasure. We Americans have inherited these two tendencies and have never learned how to reconcile them or live comfortably with both. We are constantly getting ourselves into cycles of indulging ourselves, then after that, feeling guilty, and after that, finding some way to punish ourselves. Simply stated, we are both pagan and Puritan, trying to practice a certain level of purity in the ways that we live out our life. We are a mixture of both as citizens of America. No other cultures have influenced America more than the Judeo-Christian and Greco-Roman cultures have. You know, back in the Middle Ages, when violence and promiscuity and the pursuit of wealth dominated the whole European society and even infected the highest levels of the church, the most sensitive religious people turned their backs on the world and founded monastic orders based on the ideas of poverty and chastity. That's when that started. There seemed to be no middle ground. One either lost oneself in a world of material goods and sensual pleasures, or else fled from that world and all of its temptations. We Americans have inherited both the Greek love of pleasure and the biblical ambivalence about it. We are torn between finding pleasures irresistible and finding them shameful and guilt-producing. The battle between these two continues to be as present today as it was for Adam and Eve in the garden. The author of Ecclesiastes says that wisdom is meaningless. And then he defines that. He says that pleasures are meaningless. And then he explains that. He says that work itself is meaningless. And he defines that. Even advancement in your work is not of merit. He says riches are meaningless. And he'll give you his reasons all throughout the 12 chapters of his brief little book. And keep this in mind, the author of Ecclesiastes is not speaking to us as if he were some kind of philosopher. He gives his reasons based on his first-hand experience. And here's how he seems to strike a balance, what we in America today would phrase it, between paganism and Puritanism. He writes what we are most familiar with in his book, and I just read it, but I'd like for us to read it together.
I don't think I have that.
That's okay. I'll read it for us. It's what I just read. How does he seem to balance then the pagan ideas of endless pleasure seeking and the Puritan ideas of feeling grieved because one has so much more than others? How does he strike that balance with these words? There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven. There's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. That's how I think he strikes a balance, where he begins to say, I've tried this, it's meaningless, it did not feed me, it did not help me grow inside as a person. Then I tried this thing over here with the same results. This is a profound text. It doesn't deny oneself of pleasure, but it does suggest that there would be a proper time as well as an improper time for such things. It doesn't deny oneself of the wisdom of religion, but it would suggest that there are appropriate times and inappropriate times for religion's usefulness. When you think about it, our nation today hasn't been perhaps as polarized as we have become since, well, let me say, the Civil War. And when a people become polarized, what usually happens is that they take their eyes off of the most important things that need to be addressed, while arguing over their ideals of secondary issues. Idealism for both conservatives and liberals, for both the ultra-religious and the atheist, and everything in between, ideals have a way of crippling us. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have points of view and opinions and ideas. Such things are important. Heavens, the entire Judeo-Christian culture is built upon spiritual ideals. But today it is our ideals that seem to have replaced our positions of faith and beliefs in the church. Adam Hamilton hit upon this very theme when he spoke at the National Cathedral of the inaugural of Barack Obama just a couple of weeks ago. He's the one that we often use his material in our worship. I went to Dallas and asked him to be my associate minister when I was at Central Methodist. He is the pastor of the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection in the South Kansas City area. Adam hit upon these themes, that what is separating us as Americans today is that our ideals are causing conflict. John might have an ideal, I might have an ideal, but instead of us trying to compromise and find middle ground, we simply end up walking away from each other, no closer together, and not resolving anything that might exist between the two of us. That's what happens today in America with our ideals. Perhaps no one in all my years has said this better than Norman Neves, who served the United Methodist Church of the Servant in Oklahoma City from start to finish. He is now retired. He truly is one of my heroes. He once said to his congregation about 10 years ago, "One of the tragedies of our time is that ideology has come to replace theology for so many. The church is being populated by more and more people who begin with a primary commitment to a certain ideology and then try to squeeze their ideological commitment into some kind of acceptable theological framework. Have I seen that in my ministry?" So far, so good. But Neves then gets specific. He says, some are feminist first, and then, if there's some way to squeeze that into the framework of our faith, are Christians second, but always second. There are those whose primary commitment is to the American nationalism. And then, if they can find a way to fit it into the precepts of the Bible, are people of faith secondarily. Some are, first of all, peace advocates, environmentalists, militarists, or what have you. If they can fit their primary commitment to their ideology into the church and into faith, great. But if not, they just brush it aside and move on down the road to a different denomination, finding a place where they can replace theology with ideology. And then Norman Neves concludes with these timely words. It is not that there is something necessarily wrong with these ideologies in particular, so much as there is something very wrong about beginning with an ideology in particular and trying to work it back into an accommodating faith stance. Or to put it another way, reforms that are born out of a deep faith commitment are the kind of reforms that God calls us to make in this world. But it is crucial that it begins at that point and not the other way around, or else our ideology becomes our idolatry. There is not an ounce of energy within me that does not agree with what Norman Neves is saying here. I submit that such a thing happens not only in today's church, but in the political arena on all levels as well. Ideology has become our idolatry. And in the meantime, while we argue over social issues one after another that are secondary or tertiary in importance, we drop the ball of what should be our primary concerns that affect all citizens of our country. Power, the forceful pursuit of ideologies have become, I believe, the national paganism of our country today. But if the author of Ecclesiastes is right, that there is a time for this thing or for that thing, and that there's also a wrong time for this thing or that thing, couldn't we rightfully say today that today is the timely moment when our actions and our decisions should be uniquely shaped by this one question? What is in the best interest of America today and our children of tomorrow? Didn't it finally just come down to all of us to address that question in the way we live our lives, the way our churches operate and run business, the way our political leaders vote on debatable subjects? What is in the best interest of America today and our children tomorrow? Let me close with what I think is one of the most profound religious thoughts I know. I want this to stay with you. In the world to come, each of us will be called to account for all the good things God put on earth which we refused to enjoy. Where'd that come from? It came from the Talmud. The Talmud. The Talmud is the collected wisdom of the rabbis of the first 5 centuries. And that's where this statement came from. Let me read it again. In the world to come, each of us will be called to account for the good things God put on earth which we refused to enjoy. Isn't that a remarkable statement? No scorn, no disgust for either the body or its appetites. Instead, a sense of reverence for the pleasures of life which God put here for our enjoyment. A way of seeing God in the world through the experience of pleasant, sometimes even sacred moments. And like all gifts, of course, they can be misused. But then the fault is ours, not God's. To view the human body and the whole natural world with disgust or mistrust is as much a heresy as to view it with unqualified reverence. The person who seeks out pain and discomfort because she has come to believe that she deserves it. It is as sinful as to find life's comforts as the person who mindlessly seeks out pleasures as the sole purpose of their life. Both alike will come to this book of Ecclesiastes' melancholy conclusion by saying, "What have I gained from all of this? For life for me is futile." Either that pagan extreme, where all life is meant for me and I'm supposed to do whatever I want and will my way around, or the Puritan extreme. I must be obedient, I must not enjoy life, I must not have fun. I'm not here on this life given to me by God to enjoy it. Both of those extremes are what we face in our country today, and they're both equally wrong. There is a time and a place that is proper for almost everything. Not everything, but almost everything. This, I deeply believe, is the mandatory time for Americans to ask, well, what is best for America today and for our children tomorrow? And the answers to that question is not going to be found on the extreme left or the extreme right. It is not going to be found under a pagan doctrine where anything goes, or a Puritan doctrine where life is nothing but a stern hour after hour. Amen.
Thank you for joining us on our pre-recorded Sunday morning service. If you would like a copy, you can contact the office at 660-359-6762 or email us at wesleyum@sbcglobal.net. Feel free to visit us in person or online at wesleyunitedmethodist.us, where you will always find open hearts, open minds, and open doors. May the blessings of Jesus Christ be upon you in every aspect of your life.